The Texas sun burned down like a torch from heaven, casting long shadows across the dusty arena. The smell of sweat, leather, and dry earth hung thick in the air as a crowd of weathered cowboys leaned over the wooden rails, their hats low, eyes fixed on the center ring. It was auction day in Burnet County, and the energy was electric. But no one expected what happened next. Knox, a powerful young chestnut stallion, stomped his hooves anxiously. His muscles rippled under the sunlight, and his wild eyes flicked from man to man like he was searching for something, or someone. Inside the ring stood Ransome, 54, a seasoned horseman with decades of ranch dust on his boots and a lifetime of secrets in his eyes. Beside him, his eager apprentice Colt Everett adjusted his grip on the lead rope, trying hard not to show his nerves. Without warning, Knox reared. His front legs shot into the air, casting a shadow over Colt, who froze for a split second too long. The next moment he was on the ground, his hat spinning across the dirt as the horse loomed over him. The crowd gasped. For a heartbeat, it looked like disaster was inevitable. But then, something strange happened. Knox stopped. Mid-motion, hooves raised high, he held still. Then he backed away. Bo rushed to Colt's side, his voice calm but urgent. "You all right, son?" Colt nodded, shaken but unharmed. The stallion stood at the far side of the ring now, breathing heavy, head lowered like he'd just come out of a trance. Around the arena, cowboys exchanged puzzled glances. Harlan Tate, one of the oldest breeders in the county, leaned over the railing and muttered, "I've seen nervous horses, but I've never seen one stop like that. That ain't normal." Bo didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Knox, who stared back with an intensity that made Bo's skin crawl. Something about that look, it wasn't just wild. It was familiar. Haunting. It reached deep inside him and pulled on something he thought was buried long ago. Colt caught his expression. "Why'd he stop?" he asked quietly. Bo's voice came out like a whisper. "Because he recognized me." Colt blinked. "Recognized you? From where?" But Bo didn't reply. Not yet. He couldn't. Not until he figured out if what he feared could really be true, or if the past had come back to haunt him through a horse with fire in his eyes and a secret in his soul. Ransome stood at the edge of the pen long after the crowd began to drift away. Dust still hung in the air, catching rays of sunlight like smoke from a dying fire. Knox, the horse, was calmer now, head low, ears twitching, but his eyes never left Bo. There was something in those eyes. Not fear. Not defiance. It was something older. Deeper. And Bo couldn't shake the feeling that he'd looked into those same eyes once before. Just not in this lifetime. Colt Everett stood beside him, brushing dirt off his shirt, his pride still bruised. "You sure you've never seen that horse before?" he asked. Bo didn't answer right away. He was too focused on the way Knox moved, the tilt of his head, the rhythm of his breath. It was almost human. And Bo had seen a lot in his years, but nothing like that moment when the horse froze mid-strike. It had felt personal. Deliberate. Later that afternoon, back at the ranch, Dixie May met Bo on the porch, her gaze sharp and worried. "Word's already spreading," she said softly. "People are saying that horse was possessed. Or trained to attack." Bo leaned against the railing and stared out at the distant fence line. "He wasn't attacking," he said. "He was warning us. Or me." Dixie tilted her head. "Bo, what are you not telling me?" Bo opened his mouth, then closed it. How could he explain what he didn't yet understand himself? The feeling wasn't new, it was ancient. The memory it stirred wasn't even fully formed, more like a scent or a song that triggered something deep in the soul. All he knew was this: that horse wasn't just another auction animal. And the name they'd given him, Knox, didn't fit. That horse had another name. A truer one. Sable. That night, Bo walked out to the barn alone, long after Colt and the ranch hands had turned in. Knox stood quietly in his stall, and when Bo opened the gate, the horse didn't flinch. He stepped forward, slowly, and Bo did the same. "Sable," he said under his breath. The horse lifted his head. The name struck like a thunderclap inside Bo's chest. Sable was the name of a mare Bo had lost. No, buried. More than 30 years ago under tragic, mysterious circumstances. As they stood there, man and beast, eye to eye, Bo felt something shift. He didn't believe in ghosts, but something in Sable's stare said otherwise. It wasn't just a horse looking back at him. It was something older. Something that remembered. The next morning, Bo Ransome didn't join the crew at sunrise like he usually did. Colt noticed first, glancing toward the house between tossing hay bales. It wasn't like Bo to sleep in. He was always the first boot in the dirt. But something had shifted in him the day before. Colt didn't understand it yet, but he felt it, like a draft sneaking in through a cracked window. That horse, Knox or Sable, as Bo had called him, had done something to the old man. Inside the house, Dixie May poured black coffee and watched her husband through the kitchen window. He wasn't eating. Just sitting at the table with an old photo album open in front of him. Dusty images of the past, rodeos, trail rides, a young woman on a black mare, stared up at him like ghosts. Dixie didn't have to look twice to know what picture he'd stopped on. Sarah. Their daughter. Gone before she had the chance to grow old. Gone because of that horse. Or one just like it. Outside, Sable stood quietly in the corral, his body still, but his eyes always searching. He didn't act like the other horses. He didn't flinch at noise. He didn't respond to treats. He just watched. Observed. Like he was waiting for something. Or someone. Colt approached the fence, trying to mask his hesitation. "Hey, boy," he murmured, holding out an apple. Sable didn't move. Didn't even blink. That evening, Bo finally spoke. He met Colt out by the barn as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting everything in gold. "You ever hear of a horse remembering another life?" he asked. Colt tilted his head, unsure how to respond. "Like reincarnation?" Bo nodded once, slow. "You think I'm crazy?" Colt gave a half shrug. "I think a lot of crazy things make sense out here." Bo smiled, just barely. It was the first time all day. Bo ran a hand down Sable's neck, slow and steady. "I buried a horse just like this 33 years ago," he said. "She died in a flood. Barn collapsed on her. But before that, she saved my daughter's life." His voice caught. "I never talked about it. Not even with Dixie." Colt listened, stunned. The pieces didn't make sense yet, but they were starting to fall into place. And then Sable did something strange. He turned his head and gently nuzzled Bo's shoulder, the exact way Sarah's mare used to. Bo froze, heart pounding. A wave of memory crashed over him, pulling him into a place he hadn't dared revisit in decades. Somewhere deep inside, the past had begun to stir. And it was only just beginning. Bo hadn't spoken of the flood in over 3 decades. Most people in Burnet County had either forgotten or convinced themselves it wasn't as bad as it was. But for Bo Ransome, July 9, 1992, still lived in the shadows of every barn beam and fence post. It was the night the river rose higher than anyone thought possible, and the night he lost his daughter. Not to the water, but to everything that came after it. That night had come back to him in fragments since seeing Sable. The scent of wet hay, the roar of the rain, Sarah's voice screaming from the loft as the barn began to collapse. He remembered the panic, running through the rising water, the weight of debris, the gut-sick fear. But mostly, he remembered the horse, her mare, Sable, bolting back into the barn when no human could reach the child. She'd led Sarah out through a broken side panel just seconds before the roof caved in. But in doing so, The mare never came out. Colt listened to every word as Bo told the story that night under the stars, their backs against a fence post, a silence between them filled with memories neither of them owned. "You named that horse Sable?" Colt asked gently. Bo nodded. "And this one, this horse in that stall, he looks at me like she did. Not just the eyes. The soul behind them." Colt didn't laugh. He didn't question. In his gut, he'd felt it too. Something about that moment in the auction ring wasn't natural. Meanwhile, word around town was getting strange. At the feed store, folks whispered that Bo had lost his mind. That the horse was cursed. Sheriff Clyde Jett dropped by the ranch unannounced, boots heavy with concern. "Folks say that animal went for Colt like he had murder in his heart," he said. "And now you're calling him by a ghost's name." Bo didn't flinch. "Sheriff, if you came to take the horse, you'll have to go through me." Dixie May stayed quiet through it all, but something in her had shifted too. She watched Sable with attention she didn't admit aloud. She'd seen how he stood by Sarah's old grave at the edge of the pasture that morning, still, silent, like he remembered where she was buried. That broke her more than anything else. Whatever Sable was, he wasn't just another horse. And if Bo was right, if this was more than just memory or grief, then the past wasn't buried. It was back. And this time, it had 4 hooves and unfinished business. The letter came in the mail 2 days later. No return address, just Bo's name written in sharp, narrow handwriting he hadn't seen in over 30 years. He opened it on the porch with trembling hands, Dixie May watching from inside with a dish rag clenched between her fingers. She knew that look on his face. It was the same look he'd had the day after the flood, when he realized that not everything lost had stayed buried. Inside the envelope was a photograph. A grainy black-and-white snapshot of Bo and another man standing beside the original Sable, the mare, back in 1991. Behind them was the old barn, long gone now. The man beside Bo was Harlan Tate. Not the one everyone knew, but the one before the guilt and the whiskey set in. Bo hadn't spoken to him in decades, not since the accident that changed everything. But scrawled on the back of the photo were just 5 words: "We need to talk. Now." Bo didn't hesitate. He saddled up and rode into town, leaving Colt in charge. Colt tried to ask questions, but Bo just said, "Some debts don't stay paid forever." At the edge of town, inside the dark, musty feed store where time stood still, Bo found Harlan waiting. His face was older, eyes sunken, voice rasped by years of smoke and silence. But there was urgency in the way he leaned in. "That horse," Harlan said, "he came from the same bloodline. You know that, don't you?" Bo stared at him, jaw clenched. "You sold that bloodline off after the flood. Said you were done." "I lied," Harlan whispered. "One of the foals survived. Born premature, thought it was weak. But it didn't die, Bo. I kept it hidden, sold it under another name. That's your Sable's son." Back at the ranch, Sable grew restless. He paced in his corral, eyes on the distance like he sensed the storm rolling in. Colt stood nearby, uneasy. He'd spent his life around horses, but none had ever unnerved him the way this one did. Savannah Ray, the town vet, had stopped by to check on him, and even she admitted something was off. "There's trauma in this horse," she said. "Deep. Like it's been passed down." As Bo left Harlan and stepped back into the fading Texas light, one thing was clear. This wasn't just about memory. It was about blood. Legacy. And a truth he thought had drowned long ago was about to surface, whether he was ready or not. That night, a storm rolled in, not one of wind and lightning, but the kind that brewed low in a man's chest. Bo Ransome sat at the edge of his bed, staring at an old wooden box he hadn't opened since the day Sarah died. Dust clung to the hinges. The lock was rusted but fragile. Dixie May stood in the doorway, her voice barely a whisper. "You really think it's him?" Sable's bloodline. Bo didn't look up. It's more than that. That horse remembers things he never lived. He pried the box open and pulled out a stack of journals, photos, and a worn leather halter, Sable's original. The smell of old leather brought memories flooding back like they'd been waiting just beneath the floorboards. He flipped through Sarah's drawings, sketches of her and the mare galloping across open pastures, her looping handwriting labeling each one, "Me and Sable. Forever." Bo swallowed hard. The guilt never left, not for the flood, not for what came after, and not for what he failed to protect. Meanwhile, in the barn, Sable grew restless again. He kicked at the stall door until Colt finally opened it, guiding him out into the open paddock under the moonlight. The horse wasn't running. He was searching. His head turned toward the far field, where the old barn used to stand before the flood tore it down. Colt followed his gaze. "What are you looking for, boy?" he whispered. Sable didn't answer, of course. But his stillness said plenty. The next morning, Bo took Colt out to the ruins of the old barn. Nothing left but broken stones and wild grass now. "This is where it happened," Bo said. "The flood, the collapse, and where I buried her. Not just the horse, but the memories." Colt stood in silence, letting the weight of it settle. "You think that stallion knew where it was?" Bo nodded. "He walked straight to it in the dark. That wasn't instinct. That was memory." Later that afternoon, Savannah Ray returned, holding a file she'd pulled from the vet archives. "I traced the microchip," she said. "Your horse was sold through a private breeder 5 years ago. No public lineage. But the paperwork's weird, backdated, incomplete." She paused, almost like someone didn't want him traced. Bo took the file and felt a chill creep up his spine. Too many pieces were clicking into place. Too many things that shouldn't be possible were happening. If Sable truly carried the blood and the spirit of what had been lost, then something far bigger was waiting just beneath the surface. And the past was no longer content staying buried. Bo Ransome stood in the barn long after everyone else had turned in, the soft creak of the wooden beams above him echoing in the quiet. Sable stood in his stall, calm now, as if he too was waiting. Bo ran his hand gently down the stallion's neck, stopping just above the shoulder. That's when he felt it, a faint ridge beneath the hair. Not a scar, a brand. One he hadn't noticed before. He grabbed a flashlight and leaned in closer. The mark was nearly invisible, like someone had tried to burn it lightly or let it fade over time. But Bo recognized the shape. It wasn't a ranch brand. It was a family mark, a personal one. A symbol he and Harlan Tate had created when they bred their first horses together, back before everything went wrong. Bo stepped back, heart pounding. "You weren't just from Sable's line," he whispered. "You were one of ours." The next morning, Bo drove straight to Harlan's trailer, tires kicking up dust and anger. Harlan was waiting on the porch, sipping weak coffee and pretending this wasn't all unraveling. "You knew," Bo growled. "That brand's ours. You mocked that horse, and you never told me." Harlan set the cup down slow. "I didn't want to believe it either, that something could carry a soul. But Bo, I swear to you, when I looked in that colt's eyes the first time, I saw her. And I was scared." Bo's fists clenched, but inside, something heavier stirred, not rage, but grief. "You let me bury her. You let me bury the past. But all this time, a piece of her was still alive." Harlan nodded. "I didn't know if it was right to tell you. You'd already lost so much." For the first time, Bo didn't respond with anger. Just silence. The kind of silence that carries years of pain and the weight of what could have been. Back at the ranch, Dixie May found Sable staring through the paddock fence again, his gaze fixed on the pasture, where a light fog rolled in over Sarah's grave. She walked up to the fence, uneasy. "You remember her too, don't you?" she said quietly. And Sable, as if in answer, lowered his head and gave a quiet snort. "Not wild. Not restless. Just mourning." That night, Bo sat alone in Sarah's old room, the journals and drawings spread out before him. Her handwriting, her joy, her dreams, all of it echoed now in the soul of a horse no one believed in. But Bo did, and now he had proof. The brand, the bloodline, the behavior, it was all real. The question was, why had Sable come back now? Bo didn't sleep that night. He sat in the hallway outside Sarah's room, staring at the door like it might open on its own. There was something unfinished, something missing. Sable's return wasn't just about grief or memory. It was about truth. And Bo could feel it closing in around him. He rose just before dawn and stepped inside the room again, letting the morning light fall across the old bookshelf. Then he noticed it, a wooden panel along the back wall, slightly warped. With a pocket knife, he pried it loose. Dust billowed into the air, and inside was a small, metal tin. He opened it slowly, as if afraid of what it might contain. Inside was a folded letter, brittle with age and stained at the edges. Bo recognized the handwriting immediately. Sarah's. The envelope wasn't addressed. Just a name written in soft, shaky pencil, for Daddy. Hands trembling, Bo unfolded the letter and read, "If anything ever happens, I want you to know it wasn't the storm I was afraid of. It was the silence between us. I miss when you smiled. I miss when you used to sing to Sable. I know she's more than just a horse to you. She's family. Like me. And I hope someday you'll let her in again. Even if it's not her, exactly. Even if she has to come back in another way." Bo dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. She had known. Somehow, even as a child, Sarah had felt what adults couldn't explain. That bond between souls, between man and animal, it wasn't superstition. It was love. And Sable, this Sable, had come back to make sure Bo heard the truth his daughter never got to say aloud. Outside, the wind had picked up, and a low rumble of thunder echoed over the hills. In the paddock, Sable paced again, but this time he wasn't restless. He was waiting. Bo walked out to meet him, the letter still in his hand. He didn't speak, just held the paper to his chest and stepped into the paddock without hesitation. Sable lowered his head, pressed it gently to Bo's shoulder, the same way the old Sable had done the day Sarah was born. Back at the house, Dixie May watched from the porch, tears in her eyes. She saw something change in Bo, like a weight had finally been lifted after decades of silent suffering. But neither of them knew that Wade Buckland, rival rancher, had been watching too, and what he was planning next could shatter the fragile peace they'd just begun to find. The next evening came hot and heavy, the kind of Texas heat that makes the land feel ready to snap. Bo Ransome was walking the fence line when he smelled the smoke, faint at first, then stronger. He turned fast, heart already pounding. A trail of black clouds curled into the sky from the east pasture, and in his gut he already knew it was no accident. By the time Bo reached the field, the dry grass was burning fast, pushed by a sudden wind. The fire hadn't spread far yet, but it was close, too close, to Sable's corral. Colt was already there, beating down the flames with a shovel, his face streaked with soot. "It started on the outside of the fence," he yelled. "Somebody lit it from the road." Bo didn't hesitate. "Get Sable out. Now." They worked quickly. Bo flung the gate open while Colt led the stallion out by hand. Sable resisted at first, nervous but not wild, and Bo placed a firm hand on his neck. "You're safe. We've got you." As the horse stepped through the gate, Bo looked back and saw it, a burned rag, still smoldering, tied to a piece of barbed wire. It wasn't just arson. It was a message. Later that night, Clyde Jett, the sheriff, arrived with a grim face and a slow drawl. "Buckland's been stirring things up for weeks," he said. "He's telling folks you're keeping a cursed horse. Said it's bringing bad luck, death, disease, whatever it takes to scare people." Bo stared at him, fists clenched. "That man's hated me for 20 years. This ain't about a horse. It's about control." Inside the barn, Dixie Mae helped Savannah Ray tend to Sable's hooves, scorched slightly by the heat. The stallion stood still, trusting, his chest rising slow and steady. Savannah looked up. "You know what scares men like Buckland?" she asked. "It's not the horse. It's the idea that something bigger than them is real. That there's love they can't explain. Memory they can't erase." Dixie nodded, brushing tears from her cheek. "And that's exactly what this horse is." Bo sat alone on the porch later that night, the scorched field behind him and the stars above. He held Sarah's letter again, now smudged and creased from rereading. "He came back for a reason," he whispered. "And I won't lose him again." Behind him, Sable paced in his stall, sensing something coming. Because it wasn't over yet, and Wade Buckland wasn't done trying to tear the past apart. The sun rose quietly over Burnet County, casting golden light over the charred pasture and the silent barn. Bo Ransome stood at the fence line, hands resting on the warm wood, eyes fixed on the horizon. Behind him, Sable grazed peacefully, the tension of the last few days seeming to lift from his broad frame. There had been no more fires, no more threats. But Bo knew why. He'd confronted Wade Buckland the night before. And it ended not in fists, but in truth. Bo had ridden out to Buckland's ranch at dusk, uninvited, unarmed. Wade had come out to the porch like a man expecting a fight. But Bo didn't give him one. He just said 5 words, "She died trying to save." That stopped Wade cold. Bo told him the full story, about the flood, about Sable, about the daughter he lost. And about the second chance that somehow walked back into his life on 4 hooves. For once, Wade didn't argue. He just listened. And when Bo rode away, the old rival didn't follow. Later that morning, the community began to shift. Harlan Tate showed up with fence wire and tools. Savannah Ray brought feed and medicine. Even Sheriff Jett returned, not with warnings, but with volunteers to help rebuild the scorched land. Something in the town had changed. The fear was gone. In its place, respect. For Bo. For Sable. For the story that refused to die. In the late afternoon, Bo and Dixie Mae led Sable out to the old riverbed, where the barn once stood, and where Sarah had been saved so many years ago. A simple wooden cross still marked the spot where her mare was buried, weathered by time but never forgotten. Bo placed Sarah's letter there, weighted by a smooth stone. "You sent him back to me," he whispered. "You always knew I needed one more ride." Sable stepped forward, lowering his head toward the cross, nuzzling the base like he understood. Like he remembered. Bo laid a hand on the stallion's neck, and for the first time in decades, the silence inside him lifted. It didn't bring Sarah back. But it brought peace, something he never thought he'd feel again. As they walked back toward the ranch, the wind picked up gently, carrying the scent of wildflowers across the field where the river once ran. Bo looked at Dixie Mae and smiled, the kind that held sorrow and hope in equal measure. Behind them, Sable trotted freely, mane catching the sun. The past hadn't returned to haunt them, it had come back to heal.